Are you going to get started? Good evening. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance.
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Stop for the approval of the agenda. Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
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 Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, the agenda for this evening is approved. President's comments. I would like to thank Chairman Piatti and the rest of the election committee for their outstanding work and in their research of the vendors and putting out the RFP to the companies and that meet and or exceed the requirements as an HOA to provide election services in running our 2024 Board of Directors election. Job well done. So thank you for that. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and open the floor to public comments. Members wishing to make public comments specific to this meeting topics must state their name, address. You're limited to 5 minutes. So do I have public comments?
Over here.
Amy Peck, 109 White Horse Drive. The board is here to vote on accepting an election contractor. It appears that the board wanted to vote on this last Saturday despite the attachment not being in the packet. It appears that the board is voting on a motion despite the fact that the governing documents, MO6 Attachment A, state that, quote, the written contract shall be approved by the election committee and signed by the GM or board president, end quote. Today, homeowners do have access to the packet, but only one bid. It appears that the board is voting on a motion that goes against the advice of the election committee, a committee that met in a secret work group meeting on April 18th. There is a shocking lack of transparency regarding what the election committee is doing. When I asked when the election committee was meeting and why homeowners didn't have access to these meetings, I was told that the election committee is not an advisory committee, but an operational committee, and thus doesn't have to do that sort of thing. I can find no reference in our governing documents that call for an election committee and operational committee with different roles. In fact, our governing documents are clear. Quote, resolution C1 is to set policy regarding advisory committees and any other committees as may be necessary to assist Ocean Pines Board of Directors, end quote. Section F states, quote, meetings shall be announced in advance and be open to all members of the association, end quote. It continues, agendas shall be prepared and sent to the board president, committee liaison, and the association assistant secretary for posting on the website, end quote. Section G states, quote, the chairperson shall ensure the minutes of each meeting are prepared and that these are to be submitted for posting to the website. None of that was done. It's a violation of our governing documents. After the last two elections, which did not go smoothly, including for the first time having to postpone an election, homeowners should not have to question what is happening behind closed doors, and they should be able to trust the election process. Homeowners demand transparency. What we have is cloudy at best. We have no search committee, no access to the election committee meetings, no access to a full bid package, and the board deciding the contractor with board members running for re-election, calling for this motion and making this decision versus the election committee. And it looks like voters won't be able to observe the count in person as in previous years, but instead the HOA will pay for an expensive Zoom call. Your motion states, quote, by approving the recommendation of the election committee, end quote, but it doesn't allow homeowners access to the committee's meetings or the entire bid process. It continues, it will provide a level of confidence to all homeowners that voting procedures when followed. I'm not sure when followed is in there. That's kind of worrisome. And it continues, can provide accurate and verifiable tabulations for each candidate and that every vote is properly counted and tabulated, end quote. Because of the lack of transparency, the level of confidence is very low. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Any other public comments? Go ahead, Chair.
Mary Clifford from 103 Teal Circle. In selecting a company that can do it all, print ballots, mail ballots, count ballots, and is able to provide for online voting, the current board of directors is voting to select MK Election Services out of Connecticut and Pennsylvania. Keeping in mind that one company can do it all is the requirement for a company that will be awarded OPA's 2024 election service contract. First, let's review one company can do it all. which in reality does not appear to be the case in current and past elections. In 2023, when Election Trust from the West Coast was selected, they claimed to be the company that could do it all. However, Election Trust could not do it all and used subcontractors VoteGritty.net and ClearVote.com to do pieces of the process that Election Trust was not capable of handling. This proved to not be a company that can do it all. In 2024, when once again looking for one company that can do it all, we find that the proposed contract that is being voted on tonight is once again not one company that can do it all, but in fact appears to be utilizing subcontractors as well. That being Allegheny Commercial for printing of ballots and RJW Hired Hands for mailing of ballots. This brings me to our local contractor, Ace Printing, that has been handling OPA's elections for many years without any issues or problems. In fact, when in 2023, the election process needed an emergency mailing, OPA turned to Ace Printing to bail them out of a serious situation. So why has the Elections Committee not reached out to Mr. Gulias this year? Why has Mr. Piatti, the current chair of the Elections Committee, quoted in a local newspaper as saying that Ace Printing has been disqualified? Is it because Ace Printing does not do online voting in-house along with printing, mailing, and processing of ballots? In speaking with Mr. Gulias, he has confirmed that no one from OPA has reached out to him or informed him of the search for a new election process company in which Ace Printing and Mailing would be prepared to handle printing, mailing, processing, and online voting. Ace Printing at a minimum should have been given the consideration and was prepared to do it all with Vote Now HOA, the online voting company that did an excellent job for OPA in 2022 election, according to Mr. Piatti. With my experience in reviewing and approving business contracts and selecting qualified software companies for multi-billion-dollar corporations, I am here to ask what testing or proof of concept has been performed by the proposed company, MK Select Election Services. Has the requirements document, exception processing document, disaster recovery document, fallback plans, testing plans, test results, or any other normal software tasks been completed prior to awarding OPA's election contract to a new and unknown entity? Or are we headed for election fiasco year number 3? It is my request, and I am sure that of many others, that the board reconsider Ace Printing as our 2024 election processing company, a company that has been with OPA for many years with a record of meeting deadlines, bailing out OPA with emergency mailings, and has provided OPA with accurate, honest, and unquestionable service, being awarded to the 2024 election process contract. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. Any other public comments? Seeing no further public comments, I'm going to close the floor to public comments. New business. We have second reading regarding resolution M06. John.
Yes, please. Again, the motion to consider and adopt revisions to resolution M06 as a second reading. Purpose to articulate election and referendum procedures in resolution M06. Background, the revisions received the first reading at the March 23rd, 2024 regular board meeting. It's an effort to clarify the elections and referendum procedures in attachment A of resolution M06.
Any discussion? I'm sorry, second?
Second.
Good. Discussion. Betsy.
Thanks, Rick. First of all, I just want to express to my colleagues on the board that I appreciate the courtesy that was extended last Saturday, when I was aware that we didn't have the attachments to M06 for consideration, and it seemed like a suitable idea to put package together at the time. That aside, I want to express my appreciation for the work of the Elections Committee, and in particular, Tom and George, who met with the Bylaw and Resolutions Committee, I would say about 2 months ago. Yeah, 2 months ago. I thought it was a really good meeting. There was a frank and open discussion. who is, I think, quite helpful. I was pleased that Tom identified the issue in attachment A about if you get a paper ballot, an electronic ballot, how do we handle that? The way it was handled in the the amended version is that it goes to the first ballot received. They address the need to get our attachments and our resolution in line for electronic voting. I do, may I ask a question, Tom?
Yeah, sure. Yes, I'll go ahead and suspend Robert's rules.
Thank you.
Go
Tom, just to clarify, I know there's no paper trail for electronic voting. And we get caught up in terminology very often, but my question to you is, are you satisfied that the contractor that ultimately we could select has the ability to create and follow an audit so that we know electronic people who voted electronically, these are the people who voted, these are the ballots that were cast. We don't have to know how they voted. But if we had to do a review, there's a sufficient capability to do an audit for the electronic voting.
Yes, in fact, even last year with Election Trust, we got Excel spreadsheets that showed who voted, their property address, their lot number, the date and time that they voted, their email address, and their IP address, because it was tied to a code on the ballot. So if they voted online or with a ballot, switch was turned off and the first in counted, and we got that printout. After the election, within 2 weeks, we got all those documents electronically on a key fob or on a flash drive, and the actual ballots and envelopes. They were physically delivered here, and they're in a file cabinet across the hallway. And that's the same thing that will happen with any other one-stop election contractor.
Thank you. The only other thing I would mention is I said at the meeting of the bylaws committee that I was sure you would get a lot of pushback over the fact that we may have a contractor who doesn't allow for observable recount or count, if it's not observable recount, but so far things have been sort of quiet. So anyway, my congratulations to the committee for their work. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry you're leaving.
Robert's rules. Okay. Any other further discussion?
Yeah, I want to say, awesome job on MO6. I've read it several times and I just wanted to see if I could put together a timeline based on the verbiage in MO6 that was easily done. And that's a big deal. From start to finish, I can see exactly the day that things happen, like solicit additional candidates, election materials compiled, ballot deadline. Everything was addressed there. It's very logical. Nice job.
Any further discussion? Anything else? I'm good. So with that, I would like to go ahead and make a motion to approve the changes to resolution M06 as presented. A second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call it the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Abstention? Motion passes. Next up, we're gonna go ahead and move forward with the approval of an election vendor. What I like to do now is I like to suspend Robert's rules once again and have Chairman Piatti brief the board on this whole process that has taken place to where we're at presently right now, as far as your recommendation to move forward with a specific vendor.
Sure. We have records that go back to 2018 and on how the elections committee was involved, the process is as an operational committee and an advisory committee, how things were done, what letters were written, how they were sent out. Some executives have a limit on what they can approve contractually, but the president does not. So we looked at elections companies that were considered in 2022 when there was a move to go with electronic voting. What the Elections Committee did in 2022, they used a local printer and they used the same contractor, but HOA that's used by the park. Now, the park has 503 homes. It's very, very simple. But when you're dealing with 8,600 envelopes that have to go out and how they're processed, what we found out is that there was the potential for spillage. In other words, electronically. If Vote Out HOA Now gave a roster, it would have to go to the local printer to run against all the ballots that he was picking up at the police station, at the Berlin post office and all that. It was a very, very complicated process. And of course, we know that using OPA equipment and software that OPA purchased, and it cost $1,000 a year to maintain, the electronic or the ballots were filed locally, and it didn't work out. So what we did is we actually looked at the companies that the 2022 Elections Committee looked at. Believe it or not, Elections Trust was one of them. And there were others. So in 2023, when we looked at different companies, Elections Trust had a lot of federally certified, and pretty much all these companies use subcontractors for printing and mailing. Matter of fact, M&K, it's done in Pittsburgh. The company in Jacksonville, Florida, that's done in Georgia. So that's not unusual for a company to resource to the, not maybe the cheapest or the best value. Right? That's the way of the world in contracting. So we looked at SBS, and probably a lot of you don't know is that we have a sister HOA. It's called Lake of the Woods. Established by Boise Cascade in 1968. It's in Virginia. 4,200 lots, 850 are on the water. They use companies. So in other words, we looked at the company, then we looked at people who would recommend them and how the process went. So it wasn't a one and done. We actually went and got, information. Jacksonville, if you look at these proposals, they're very complicated to look at. How much this cost, how much that cost. But M&K out of Pittsburgh, they are very, very detail oriented. You know what you're paying for. And they offer the Zoom observable count. So that's why we recommended M&K. I might add that when you look at these figures and you look at the spreadsheet of the costs, business reply mail can only be estimated because you don't know how many people are going to vote online. I mean, last year we had more votes than in 2022. But I would say, I would predict that 1,000 people are going to vote online and 22,000 are going to send in their ballots. We amended MO6 to add that there will be a drop box at the police station and that anything that's received in there will be express mail to the contractor. So that will stay in place because it's expected. We've been doing this for years and years. So we talked to M&K about that. They have no problems. The yes elections was, I don't know if you call it a better value, but they don't offer observable count. As a matter of fact, out of the 5 companies we looked at last year, 3 don't offer online voting. A lot of companies don't. If you've got a big HOA, you want online voting, but a lot of the HOAs that have 3 or 400 may or may not. So we did our due diligence. We had a quick work session because I always include my team in everything that we do. They reviewed the documents, they reviewed the letter that I prepared to send to the board. And that's about it. We came up with yes elections without the observer account and NK with. And I think they're a good company. And they're on the East Coast. Last week, I did send the board of directors an article from NBC News about the post office and the postal shortages that's been experienced countrywide.
Yeah.
That's the way of the world. And we live in a society that wants instant gratification. If you send something in, you want something back. Well, vote electronically and you'll get that email back. Or you can go to that site and check to see if your vote was processed. That's about it, Rick.
Now, I do remember after last year's election that we did ask our membership to update their information for how to get in touch with, whether they needed to update their emails or addresses. I know we went ahead and that was sent out. So I would hope that individuals had done that.
I hope so too, because a lot of people are under the impression that the email blast they get from Constant Contact is their official email that OPA has on file. It isn't. And there's no interface between them.
Right. Any other comments?
And, Tom, I noticed, I think 800 properties are ineligible to vote. And we send out kind of a reminder prior to that. And I think in the past, you've indicated that we've been able to clear up a certain amount of them.
Last year,
Still about the,
that's right. What happened in the past, July 2nd used to be the date, the eligibility date. And on July 2nd, and remember, we got the 4th of July right after that. That's when ballots were sent out to valid people could vote, and ineligible, the letter went out. What we did last year is we sent the ineligible letters earlier, and 128 owners rectified their situation and were able to vote. We've actually backed that up this year. Another what, George? 10 days?
10 more days.
Yes.
And we also are sending the ballots out 21 days earlier.
Yes.
Because of the post office.
Yeah, so if you look at the bylaws, we've got that time frame that we've got to get this done, the eligibility of this July 2nd, and then you've got the annual meeting, which is the second Saturday in August. That's too short a time frame. But you've got to amend, we need a referendum to amend the bylaws to change that.
Sure.
But within the elections committee, last year we were successful in getting 128. This year, maybe more. So that's our plan. And when I went out with the RFP, we had a timeline of when these contractors had to, when we had to provide them the information, they had a 3 or 4 day period, which they had to produce all the documents and get them in the mail. So we're hopeful that will bring more people into the, be able to vote.
appreciate that. And just to finish off, and want to thank you and George and the team for all the work. I did go through all of the RFPs. I went through all of the online, looked at all of the companies online, kind of, looked at some of their, some of the lists, other businesses that they work with and see, and we have a very good, very good full.
It's all about references. I mean, trade unions,
Right.
Homeowners associations, everybody in here probably has got investments. You get a letter from, TIA CREP or whatever, because you got to vote for the board of directors or changes. And when it gets to SBS, about 18 months ago, everybody in this room got a letter from them because Chop Tank Electric was voting for their board of directors and changes to the bylaws, and they're a nonprofit. We all got it. That's how we focused on that company out of Minnesota. Yes, but they couldn't meet our qualifications. Plus, they're in Minnesota, and we don't want to go through this West Coast, Midwest problem. That's why we concentrated on East Coast companies.
Thank you very much.
I have one question on it. Will we have a single point of contact over, with the company that you're recommending? MK, will it be a single point of contact that you'll be dealing with?
Yes,
On that,
So far it's been me.
but we're talking about.
but on the other end,
With
through MK,
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm talking about MK. I'm the
Okay.
one that found the company.
right? Now, will there be somebody on their end that you'll be communicating back and forth on a regular
I have
basis?
The man's
Okay.
name, I've been
Okay.
in contact.
Okay,
In fact, when, he sent his RFP back, there was a question about, I had asked him if they could do a confirmation on paper ballots. And he had forgotten to put it in, so he put that in that, thing that he's, in that thing that he sent.
That's Kenny up there.
And his name is Kenny Moston, and I asked him where his servers were, how he was set up electronically, what kind of software he used. His servers are in 2 separate states, plus what he has at his place of business. One of the reasons why he uses the outside contractor for doing the printing is because to be able to get that alphanumeric number on 3 separate sheets of paper, including the person's name, all at the same time, you put it out. It's a machine that runs approximately $250,000 to $300,000. There's only 2 of them in western Pennsylvania. I mean, that's a lot of bones to pay for something like that.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why that's all put out, because he hires professionals.
gotcha.
Thanks, George.
Any other questions
Yep.
from board, Steve?
Yeah, just if, can I just?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Tom, I just, want to be clear. The original memo that we got, that was sent to the board, was, that the committee was recommending, contract board to yes elections in Mineola, New York, but does not provide an observable count.
Right.
They provide the best value, which includes a 10% nonprofit discount, and a fixed election service pricing for 3 years. If the board desires an observable count, we recommend contract to MK Election Services in Pittsburgh. In terms of the dollars that are on the table, the difference between MK and Yes Elections is in round numbers, 6,000 some odd, roughly, almost $7,000.
No,
Is that the cost of the observable count?
If you look at one of the footnotes, because we cannot predict who will vote and put it in the mail, it's very hard to state how much it's going to cost. In fact, if you look at all their proposals, they say at cost. So what we did is that we went in there with an estimate. But yes, the observable count is going to cost you $5,000-6,000.
Okay, so I guess what I'm asking, again, looking at the table that you all provided to the board, there's a significant difference between Yes Elections and the other 4 companies that respond. And I guess what I'm asking you is between the 2, MK and Yes, you're comfortable that either one of the 2 companies can perform as we expect.
Correct.
The difference in price goes to the observable count.
Yes. And we even asked them if they took the observable count out, they wouldn't. In other words, to reduce the cost. That question was asked. So it's actually in there and you're going to get it, whether you like it or not.
So we're paying for it whether, okay.
Correct, with MK.
you say we're not reducing
It would not reduce for us.
part of their package.
And The observable count that we had last year, as I recall, I did not observe personally, but I heard enough about it, was somewhat flawed, and basically it is just putting ballots through the sorter or the counter. Is that essentially what we're talking about?
No, it's not flawed at all. The observable account, that was the adjudication process. What happens is they run, first of all, you got the electronic part, but the election trust didn't have that.
Right.
Last year, all the ballots are run through a system and a PDF is made. And then it tabulates how many, and in fact, I got it right here, if you want to read it. So what happens, those questionable ballots, because somebody marked it wrong or wrote something on it,
Right.
those were shown to us. There were 18 of them individually, and the elections committee had to made a determination whether they were valid or not. And we went through that. How many people observed that? What did we have? 21 in there, maybe some online?
We had 21 people in that view.
Yeah, but I consider that flawless.
I used the wrong word. I appreciate that. Okay. My recollection was the story that sort of popped up was that when they came online for everybody to see, someone held up a piece of paper, and then from there, the count, I guess the question of certain ballots took place after that.
Yeah, well, what they did is that they had photographs of the questionable ballots. They had all the ballots, but they fast forward to one questionable ballot.
Right.
And they say, okay, they X'd it and then they checked it, should it be counted? And, based upon the average age here in Ocean Ponds is 59, and people don't follow instructions, and we can tell you that for sure. From them dropping actual ballots in the ballot box instead of put them in the envelope. You're going to go through that where a human has to determine whether it's valid or
So
not.
let me go back to one other point. So the observable count that we're talking about is essentially the process that the committee goes through to address the ballots that are questionable. Is that a fair statement?
No.
Let me see.
No, go ahead, George. This is different.
If you had read the RFP from M&K, they have a whole page of different processes during the count, how it is done, how the count is tested. And I believe there is 5 separate processes, which includes an adjudication. It's in the RFP right
Yeah.
here. And it is a very precise thing that they go through. It will be more than what we had last year.
But what you're describing is in fact the observable count.
Is what?
What you're describing right now, the 5 steps is in fact the observable.
It is the type of observable count.
Okay,
A true observable count cannot be seen because you cannot see what's going on inside
with the
that,
machine.
inside that computer.
Right.
Okay, but they will go through a testing process of everything. And we have, if we wanted to go through 2 to 3 hours to do the whole thing, or just a canvas of to see how everything adds up, that is for us to determine. But it's all in the RFP for M&K.
Yeah. Now,
On the last page.
let me give you a comparison. Last year, there were 2,967 automatically adjudicated ballots. This year, because we're going to have electronic voting, it will be under 2,000. Hopefully, we'll only have 1,500, so it'll be a quicker process if we actually encourage people to vote electronically. Vote online.
Okay.
Shut the garage door? No, it didn't look like you were shutting it.
Yes, you're gonna have to, please close your mic, please. Those that are online, please close your mic. Any further questions? Jeff?
I just have two, the email, the e-voting. I forget which one of the companies had the capability of updating your email on their.
All of them,
Do that, okay, that was my question.
every single one of them. And also too, they have they can go through a process with the post office to make sure that they are viable addresses so that we don't pay postage for something that is incorrect. So it can be rectified. That is a standard procedure for any one of these election companies that we chose.
And last question, MK election, will the optimization be there for smartphone, tablet, personal computer?
Yes.
As long as it can go in and use Wi-Fi or get on the internet. You could use a smartphone, you could use whatever you want. They even there was one company that advertised that they actually voted on an airplane.
I did read that. Thank you.
But, which is, oh my God, I forgot to vote here, whatever. But all those things were taken into consideration when we picked the 5 that we did. There was a lot of vetting that went on. I would say there was probably 5 or 6 that got booted. Like I had a ex-client of mine that from Michigan that went and checked out, and they were working out of a garage. It was a one phony, one person deal that looked very, very good until you got into it.
Yeah, a one-trick pony.
I had ex-clients of mine check every single one of these companies out personally.
Nice. Okay, George, thanks.
Any other further questions from the board to the folks here at the election committee at all? I'm gonna go ahead and reinstall Robert's rules. I'm gonna go ahead and move forward with a motion to approve a recommendation from the elections committee. Motion is to read, to obtain board approval for recommendations pertinent to the processes of the 2024 Board of Elections presented by the election committee and award a contract to MK Election Services out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The purpose and effect is by approving the recommendation by the election committee, it will provide a level of confidence to all homeowners that voting procedures, when followed, can be accurate and verifiable tabulations for each candidate, and that every vote properly counted and tabulated. On the background, on April 19th, 2024, Chairman Piatti informed Secretary Latham and Board President Farr that the election committee conducted a work session on April 18th, 2024 to finalize recommendations to the board to award a contract for election services for the 2024 Board of Directors election. A formal memorandum of the recommendation along with a cost comparison worksheet was provided and shared with all board members. The worksheet was compiled using responses from each contractor. Responses from vendors to provide election services was forwarded to the board as well for their review. Based on the election committee's findings and the committee's work sessions conducted, the election committee is recommending a contract award to MK Election Services out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which has observable count for the cost of $26,335. The 2024-2025 OPA budget line item for elections referendums is $35,000. With that, I'd like to make a motion to approve the award of the contract to MK Services to run the director's election. I have a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? Steve?
I'm just, not to disparage the work of anybody else, in any way, I mean, what it sounds like is we could save someplace between $6,000 to $7,000 on these estimates if we do not go with a company that provides the observable count, which last year had less than 25 people observing, which seems like an awful lot of money if you divide 20 or 25 people by $6,000. I don't get the sense that there's this great need for people to sit in front of their computers or go to a room to see somebody else, go through the process of tabulating votes. And as Tom points out, within a few days, all of the appropriate documentation and files and whatnot that we would need came back to us and are now safely stored. This doesn't seem to be, in my opinion, a justification for spending the extra money. And that's just what I think.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something in.
Go ahead, Stu.
Yeah, to echo Steve, $6,000-7,000 for a Zoom call is a little bit on the high side, but people are always railing on us about making sure everything's transparent. I think it's worth the investment.
Any further discussion? Go ahead.
I agree with the.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Well, I mean,
Go ahead.
I understand the point, and I thought that's the same, but I do agree with you, for transparency, it's something that we're gonna get knocked if we do it. For the money, we're gonna get knocked if we don't for transparency, so to me, the balance, to me, is transparency as much as we can.
Any further discussion?
I'm not sure there's a right or wrong answer here.
But there isn't.
Seeing none, I'll go ahead and call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, election. Aye.
All opposed?
Okay.
Abstentions? The motion passes for the award of the contract to MK Election Services. A motion to adjourn,
So moved.
second?
Second.
All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion adjourned has passed. Thank you.